Welcome to Smen Woodow. Oh, can I have that back actually? Welcome to Moodie News. Oh! Nearly had an accident there. Welcome to Moodie News. Today I'm here to introduce, what am I here for? Today I'm here to introduce a very good friend of mine, the lovely, talented stylist, Karl Plewka. Over to roving reporter, Neil Moodie. Without further ado, I introduce you to Karl Plewka.
Hello.
And we'll get on with the questions. Hi Karl.
Hi Neil.
We've said hello ages ago anyway, but right, Karl. First and foremost, tell me, where does the name Plewka come from?
Well, Plewka, which should probably be pronounced Plewka, is from Prussia, which is a former kingdom of Germany.
Ah.
So my grandfather's German, so long time ago the family would have come from Prussia.
Right, right. Prussia is now Russia, right?
Germany.
It's Germany.
And I actually thought for a while, someone misled me to believe it was Poland and Russia combined.
That's
Prussia.
what I thought.
No,
Yeah.
and because of this, I've actually found it's like been doing that. It's like that program on TV. Who do you think you are? I actually looked it up last night on the internet, and it actually said Prussia, which actually explains my heritage more than the other side. The other thing did, and it says that Prussia was a former kingdom of Germany because Germany used to be made up of lots of kingdoms,
Right.
like states, and they'd all have their own king or whatever. So basically, that's where it comes from.
Oh, cool. Okay. So we'll get into the proper questions now. What did you want to be growing up?
When I grew up, I wanted to be an actor that just did horror films, like Boris Karloff or Lon Chaney or somebody. And I used to be, the highlight of my week was staying up on a Saturday. I don't know if you remember, BBC used to have a double bill of horror films. And the first one was always a bit old and crackly and like from the 40s, like a sort of old, like, you know, Boris Karloff movie. So I normally managed to stay up for that one. And the second one was always a bit more like a sort of 70s, more sort of blood and guts style horror film, and I think I wanted to be an actor, but not a serious actor, a horror film actor.
Yeah. Oh, so really specific.
And then I ended up in fashion. And there's a lot of acting involved in that as well.
I was about to say,
I think being a stylist or a hairdresser or a makeup artist, even more than being a model, I think you have to perform.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to go into sort of quite surreal scenarios, you know, on a day-to-day basis, and I think we have to turn it on, and you have to be different with different people sometimes just to get through the day. People you've never met before, or people that are, you know, quite intimidating to be around or to work with. And I think that there's a lot of that in our job that we have to actually do to sort of, you know, get through the day and to make a good and to do a job. I think it's like, you know, as you know, it's not how good you are at doing hair. It is that, but it's also how good you are at performing in front of a group of people a lot of the time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've always said we're almost a little bit like entertainers a little bit, because especially with the models, you know, in the morning they deal with us first, and it's our job to kind of not only make them look amazing, but also to get them in the right spirit for the shoot and to feel good about themselves, and you end up feeling a little bit like you are entertaining. You know, and also keep the spirits up throughout the day as well.
And I think that I'm kind of drawn to the sort of the theatrical side of my job in a way. Like my favourite thing to do, I think probably one of my favourite things to do is to style fashion shows, because I love that sense of theatre and backstage and like people waiting for something, they don't know what's going to happen, what's going to come out of the, you know, from behind the runway. I love that. I love that sense of unexpected and I like the sense of a show in a way.
Great. How did you end up doing what you're doing now?
Well, my mum was in fashion, worked in fashion, and she was. I think the women and the men in my family were always very well dressed and still are, and there was always a big sense of importance in my family in different generations of my family, from you know, like I remember my great grandparents and my great grandmother, who was my father's grandmother, being incredibly stylish. She came from a theatrical background. Her father was one of the Lauderdale brothers, who were like a really big what's the word? Sorry, big variety act.
Yeah.
Back in like would have been the 30s or late 20s, and there was always a big sense of style, and my parents always. I mean, I always remember almost being quite intimidated by my mother when she dressed up to go out, because it was always such a big thing, and it was always like, you know, it was so much went into it, and there was and there was always like copies of Vogue lying around, and my parents' friends were always very interesting, artistic, stylish people, even though we lived in the country. And I think that when you live in the country side, I think that people that are a certain type of person kind of gravitate towards each other, and they become sort of quite cliquey.
Yeah.
And I remember my parents had all sorts of artistic and interesting friends when I grew up, from all walks of life, and so there was always a lot of inspiration. There was always a sense of fashion and beauty as well being very important. When I was at boarding school, I got interested in. I remember having subscriptions to magazines like style magazines, like The Face, ID, Interview magazine, which is quite weird because all of them I ended up working for later on in life.
You ended up working for
but I remember like being obsessed with, you know, what was going on. I was obsessed with music as well. I mean, before that it was smash hits and NME, and I was really into music in a way. Like that was something that I had to. I think when you're a kid, when you're a teenager, you have to follow things. You have to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Especially if you live in an isolated world like I did, so it was like knowing everything about who the bands were and what was popular in music and that kind of side of popular culture. And then gradually, as I got into my later teens, I started really being like completely mesmerised by the shoots that I saw in magazines like Blitz and The Face and ID, and I used to look at images in the magazines taken by, I don't know who would have been, or styled by someone like Ray Petrie, and I'm just wondering how I couldn't understand how they'd actually got to this image, and how I wanted to know what went into making it and what went into producing it, because I didn't even know what a stylist was. And then I kind of just gravitated towards fashion, I guess, and moved to London and got a job as an assistant in the office of John Richmond when I was 19. I kind of eschewed going to further education from that point, but I wanted to throw myself into it, and it was an incredibly exciting time in 1988-89 in fashion in London. And Newburgh Street, where I worked underneath the shop in an office, in the production office for John Richmond, was like this real hotbed of like, you know, what was going on. I mean, there was like, you know, on the same street there was Pam Hogg, Boyd and Story, Jess James,
Junior Gaultier,
which is now the Mac shop, and you know, and I remember like even like the shop assistants were incredibly glamorous. I mean, they would be like, or not glamorous even, well, glamorous, yeah, but in an edgy way. Like there was this amazing black girl with a shaved head who used to strut up and down the street in a Gaultier outfit, who worked in the Gaultier shop, and she ended up becoming Smoking Joe the DJ, and everyone kind of went somewhere from this. It was like almost like the kind of casting couch for going on and doing other things, and I felt incredibly lucky to be part of this thing. And John Richmond was a designer who catered for, you know, the music industry. A lot of bands, you know, in magazines would wear his tattoo leather jackets, all the jackets with the D-rings on the epaulets, and all of that stuff that was, you know, that was kind of iconic at the time.
Yeah.
And you know, John had a lot of famous music industry friends as well, and you know, you'd go out for lunch and get a sandwich around the corner and come back, and Annie Lennox would be sat behind, you know, on the other side of the desk waiting to see John. And it was all, for me, it was like, as a 19-year-old kid from like the sticks, it was just like this incredible, you know, moment. And I was only there for about 10 months. I think I wasn't doing my job particularly well because I was going out nearly every night clubbing, and that all came to an end. But and then I met Joe Corey, Vivienne Westwood's son, at a party, and I was very brazen, I think, in those days. Probably still am, but I was very brazen then, and I was very sure of myself.
We don't have any fears back then.
I probably got less sure of myself as I got older. If I had that confidence now, God knows. And basically, I just went up to him at a party and just said, "Oh, have you got any jobs going?" And I think he was so sort of taken aback. He said, "Oh yeah, could give me a call on Monday." And so I went to the offices of Vivienne Westwood in Camden, and got a job in the office with Joe sat on one desk, the accountant on another, and me typing up invoices in the middle, getting it all wrong because I couldn't really type. Bored out of my mind. Just desperate to, for the moment in the day when Vivienne would come in, and I was just like, I'm not going to stay working in this boring office with an accountant and the managing director of the company, who was Joe. I'm going to go and work with Vivienne. So gradually, I kind of ingratiated myself upon her. I don't know how I did it, and eventually I ended up, working for her and becoming her PA, and then I was there for 4 years, so. We ended up taking the PR in house, and I started taking care of that and overseeing the shows and getting involved in all sorts of things. In those days it was such a collaboration because there wasn't like one stylist who came in and styled the show.
Yeah,
it was like about 8 of us. All the design assistants, the designers, and the people that did production. We'd all get together and we'd stay up all night drinking wine and looking at all the all the different outfits and going, well, yeah, maybe she needs a copy of the Times under her arm, and maybe she needs we're showing in Paris, maybe she needs a baguette sticking out of her handbag, whatever it was, because Vivienne was always very theatrical, and it was always it was a show. It wasn't about like some bony Russian girl walking down the runway with a face like thunder. It was like character, and it was, all those amazing people like Sarah Stockbridge and Susie Bick. It wasn't Susie Menkes. Susie Bick, and they were all, and Tyza Bailey. They were actors, they were made. Kirsten McMenemy, and then it went on to more the supermodels, and Naomi and Kate eventually, and it was incredible. I mean, it was such a great way for me, who hadn't had formal fashion training or education, to learn about fashion. And just by being around Vivienne and Andreas eventually, who joined whilst I was there, and really talented people like Murray and Marks, and who worked there, I actually became sort of like sort of grained in me, how a dress should be draped, or how a jacket should fall, or I probably couldn't do it with my own hands, but I know how a jacket is sewn together. I learned a lot about fabrics, and I learned a lot about what happens when you move in certain fabrics, and what happens if you bias cut something, and what and so for me it was like the best kind of fashion training I could have ever had.
Well, that was when we met, though, wasn't it? You were still living in Westwood.
Yeah.
And I did my first test with you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And who was the model's name? What was her name? Tara.
Yeah, Jason Donovan's
girl. Well, now ex-girlfriend, but Jason Donovan's girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And that was my first ever test. And I remember coming to meet you at Vivienne's studio in Battersea, or offices in Battersea. And that was the first time we actually ever met.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of hit it off, really, didn't we? We're still here now. So.
I know. I mean, that was where I have to say that I made many incredible friends working for Vivienne, and there's still a lot of people that actually were my friends when I was working there are still working there now. That says a lot about what it is to be part of her world. I mean, it's nice to see those people, and it's nice to see Vivienne occasionally. She kind of forgave me for leaving after a couple of years. But there's some people that are still there, and I met some really, I have to say, I met a lot of good friends when I worked there. It was a very positive experience working there. It wasn't, there was other things in my life that have been less positive, but that was the perfect introduction for a young person who was interested in fashion, didn't really know where they wanted to go with it, until I sort of really decided that styling was what I wanted to do. I didn't realise when I wanted to become a stylist that it's possible without having certain training. I always felt like an imposter, because I always thought, well, you know, these days everyone wants to be a stylist and everyone thinks it's possible, which it probably is. To be a good one's another thing.
Yeah.
But I feel like I had to get over the thing where you feel that it's something, you know, you're entitled to try out.
Yeah.
Because it's not like hairdressing where there's a certain amount of formal training you have to have, otherwise you just simply can't do it.
Yeah.
You know, styling, anyone really can do it. I mean, you don't have to even be. I know a lot of stylists can't even sew a button on. You know.
Yeah. But I remember actually when we did that test, like to me, you were already so knowledgeable of fashion, and I remember being so blown away by how you were dressing this girl who was a model, and you know, because to me I was so naive to the whole thing. I remember watching you doing your thing, and I remember you being like, oh, you know, this is one of my first tests that I've done as well, but you just seemed so confident about what you were doing. But
well, I think there is a certain amount of it which comes naturally, but I think that's the same with most things. If you're lucky enough to find something or find a thread in something which feels like it's part of you, then that's great. I mean, thank God I found something, you know, that I'm kind of able to do.
Yeah.
Good or bad at it, I can do it. And it's like, I think that a lot of people struggle with that and never really find it, or find it later on, or, you know, it's weird. I have this out of body approach to styling. It's almost like, I don't want to be a woman. I don't want to wear women's clothes, but I feel like I can really put myself into the place of the woman I'm styling, and I need to know in my head, even if it's just me. I mean, sometimes it's important to have a mood board and to describe to everybody on the shoot who this person is. Sometimes I like to keep her a little bit private to me, because it's a bit of a secret thing I like to have. But it's like I have to kind of put myself into the position of the woman that I'm styling. And I say woman because mostly I work with women. I do menswear, but I do mostly women's.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and it's kind of like putting myself into her position, and almost like imagining what it is to be this person. And I can kind of do that without it becoming some gay man's parody of a woman, which I would hate to be. I'd hate it to be. You know, I'm not really interested in women looking like men looking like women, which can happen. You know, I'm not into uber glamour. I'm into like, I'm not into realness so much anymore. I just think it's great to find this place where someone's believable but hyper real. Yeah. So they're still aspirational. I'm into like luxury. I'm into finding ways of conveying luxury, which is what the end of fashion that I work in mostly is about, and kind of making it kind of interesting but still real and still not real. It's kind of a very fine thing. But it's really in my head, and it's really hard to get that out onto paper or into a conversation, because it's just, I don't know, it's this fine thing. It's like, you know, does she have makeup on? Doesn't she? Does she have scruffy hair, or does she have scruffy makeup? Does she, does she have nothing at all but just a pointy blue nail? What does she have? It's kind of like interesting fashion. It's such an enigma, because you know, or fashion styling, or fashion approaching a fashion image, because there's so many ways you can go with it, and little people don't realise that on a shoot, you know, we can make one little decision that makes it just incredible. It's a tiny thing that you wouldn't notice. When you pick up Vogue, or you look at a billboard or whatever, it's really like, you know, there's something about this image that says this is great, this is new, you know, this is innovative, and that's what you've got to find. And sometimes it's like for me it's like the golden chalice, or it's like I just get it. It's always like the, you know, like Harry Potter and the little golden ball. It's, for me, it's like that. I'm always chasing it, because sometimes you grab it for a minute and you have it, and it's just the most incredible moment. Most of the time we're searching for it, and if we had it all the time, it wouldn't be special. No. But I feel that for me is why all the hard work and all the late nights and travelling and not having a life so much when you're busy and all of that. That's what makes it so worthwhile, because you know, if you end up with a great result and it's something that people think is new, or you feel it's more how you perceive it. I think that's important. That's the best thing. That's the most amazing thing.
I guess with everything you just explained, that's what makes it so important to be then working with the right team of people as well. Because obviously, you know, like, we've worked together loads, and then we've had certain makeup artists that I know you like to work with, and you know, and then there's photographers that you've always collaborated with, blah 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 blah. But I think it's that thing where you know who's right for your shoots, because somebody can, you know, I think a stylist job now to me is like, it like you say, is bringing this woman to the shoot and kind of going, this is who we're trying to create, what would she be like?
But, and saying that, I'm not averse to working with new people at all.
Yeah.
Although it's very easy for me to become cozy, and it's very easy for me to just try and get the same people. But I mean, I work with, you know, people like you all the time, or you know, or you know, Kay or whatever, and basically it's impossible because we're all so busy. So you have to be open-minded to new people, and you
We've got
scratching behind.
Someone's behind us. Gus has gone behind.
Can we get the dogs out of here?
I know.
I can't work in these
conditions.
Come
on, Gus. You were saying working with Corin, there was never really mood boards.
Yeah, there was never. Like, it's become really. I've noticed that it's become really sort of like the thing to do, to have like mood boards.
Yeah.
And then the client will say to me, right, can you do, we want mood boards about the vibe, can you do hair and makeup mood boards? And then they ask the hair and makeup people to do mood boards, and there's mood boards after mood boards, which is great, but the trouble with it is there's only so many images available on Google Images, and that's where everybody goes, and it's always the same ones. It's always French Vogue, this Vogue, Helmut Newton, Guy Bourdin, blah blah blah. And you know, we're in danger, I think, of getting too much, because of all this information that is available to us visually, particularly on the internet, particularly because it's easy to get loads of images. I did it earlier on today with my assistant. We put together a mood board for Italian Vogue, and we did it in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, all pictures of like Marianne Faithfull and girl on a motorbike and all of this stuff, and that's fine. But the trouble is, I think, is, you know, all these images are so available, and we're always referencing the same things as each other now, and the danger is that it's rehash and regurgitation, and it's where do we get what's new from all of this?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's, I don't know who that is. Well, I think people get lost in the references and forget about trying to maybe reappropriate it a little bit or reinvent it.
Yeah, but also people are quite scared these days to sort of just go with something, and I think editors have got, you know, restrictions on budgets, and to get a story approved and commissioned by a magazine, you know, you've got to show them more or less roughly what you're doing, and I think that was less the case probably when we started in the early 90s. It was more, you know, oh yeah, we're just going to go and, like, you know, look at, you know, these sort of shapes, or, you know, we're gonna, you know, we like that Calvin dress, or that Margiela dress, or that, you know, and Kate would look great in that, or Rosemary. It was all a bit like that, you know, and it wasn't so thought out, and it was fresh.
Yeah. No,
whereas, you know, everyone's referencing that shit now. You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel that there's a little bit of a comfort blanket thing going on with all of that, and I think it might be nice to rip it off sometimes and just sort of be a bit bold and a bit brave about it.
Yeah, definitely. So going back a little bit from Vivienne Westwood, you then went on to work at The Observer, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, where you were fashion assistant initially. And then went on to become fashion editor. And then you moved to New York, which we actually did about the same time. Yeah. Which wasn't even planned, really, was it? But we just both, you got the job in New York with Interview. What was your position at Interview when you first went there?
I got hired by Victoria Bartlett and Ingrid Sishi. Victoria was somebody I knew already. She is kind of a bit of what's the word? Bit of a face. I don't know what would be the word for Vicky. She's a bit of an icon, I guess.
Icon, really.
Yeah. And she'd moved over to New York, God, must have been in the mid-80s. She's one of the original club kids from London, actually. And so she was fashion director at large for Interview. And we'd met through mutual friends, particularly when I was at Vivienne Westwood. I did shows in, like, trunk shows and shows in nightclubs and stuff when I was at Vivienne's in New York. And she would always come along with Stephen Klein and hang out and take pictures. And so, and this is before they were even well known. I mean, this is back in the day. This is like, we're talking like 1990. And so, you know, and also I'd met Ingrid, the editor at the time, editor-in-chief of Interview, because she had come to London to do meetings and interviews with the famous American writer Tammy Yanovitz. And they had arranged to have a meeting with Vivienne. It wasn't an interview, it was just to come and see her, because they'd never met. And I just remember the day it happened, Vivienne was in one of her I'm going to stay in bed and read books all day moods. And I remember they came to the office about 2 or 3, and she still wasn't there. She kept telling me she was on her way. It's before mobile phones, not that she would have had a mobile phone. And Ingrid never forgot how I was this kind of 20-year-old kid who really held it together with these two sort of bigwigs from New York, waiting for somebody who hadn't turned up. And she said that she knew exactly what was going on, but she said it was the way you dealt with it was so sweet. And I think that a lot of the job, when you work for a magazine in New York and you're a fashion editor or a fashion director, it's not just how talented you are at writing or styling or finding the next new thing or putting your finger on, you know, what is hot. It's about how you present the magazine to people, and it's about how you you know, how you can, you know, hold yourself with you know, mostly the advertisers that advertise in the magazine. So they want people that are kind of have some kind of people skill. Definitely about art, and it's definitely about commerce, and definitely the two together. And you know, so when I was at Interview as fashion editor, I was very young. I was 26, and the job consumed me quite a lot, and I never had a lot of time off, and I was kind of hanging out with people, going out a lot, partying a lot, which is what you do at that age. And I was, you know, styling covers of celebrities, styling fashion shoots, writing front of book, writing interviews, commissioning people, writers, editors, artists, stylists. So I was like, it was a really full-on job. And then every night I'd have to go to like 3 or 4 events by, you know, Calvin Klein's, you know, bought out a new pencil, and Ralph Lauren's bought out a new ironing board, and I had to go to all these things. I mean, I tried to get away with it at first and just sort of say, so the next day Ingrid would go, oh, did you go to the, you know, the I don't know what it would be, like the Donna Karan, you know,
picture frame.
Yeah. And I'd be like, oh, she brought out a new bowl made out of stingray skin. And I'd go like, yeah, I did. And then Ingrid would get a memo from the publishing department, and the publishing department run all the ads in the magazine. We have to work together. I'm the editorial, they're the publishing, and they basically control me at the end of the day. And it's like, you know, the PR would phone up. We were so sorry not to see Karl last night. In that passive aggressive way. And so I learned very quickly how to find out what I had to do. I'd arranged to have dinner with friends at 9:30, and I'd see that I had, say, 3 or 4 events to go to, uptown, midtown, downtown, wherever they were. And I just figured out the best way to do it, and it was like, you just literally, you know, you make sure the person on the door crosses your name off, and I would like literally stand there until my name was scratched out, until you couldn't see anything. You grab a cocktail or grab a glass of champagne. There's normally one person that you need to say hi to, and it's not the designer, it's the head of communications. You know, go and say hi to them, give them a kiss, whatever. run out the door, go to the next one. You can get it done in an hour.
Just fine art.
Yeah, because I didn't want to hang around. I mean, it was. I didn't want to have. I'm not that kind of person. I don't really. I love fashion. I love my job, but I'm not a PR person, and I'm not interested in the kind of schmoozy aspect of it at all. And I love the creative side. In the beginning, I was like, I'm never going to fucking see any of my friends. This job has completely taken over my life. Yeah. And then, every weekend we'd be closing the issue, or there'd always be stuff going on. So, I mean, at least 2 weekends a month I had to work.
I remember actually when we were in New York and you were doing that job, there were weekends where we just wouldn't even hear from you.
No, you wouldn't, because
you'd just disappear.
You'd just
you were
be
literally in there the whole time.
Yeah, just be there. And it was like, I kind of can write if it's on my own terms, but I'm not really. It's really hard to write for magazines because it's kind of. Depends what magazine, but it's kind of can't be like. It's really weird because especially a magazine interview where there would never be anything particularly damning or negative written about.
You can't be biased.
No.
Yeah.
But it would never be. Everything was positive. And I remember that I think there were several occasions where I was given a piece to write for the front of the book, which is like a page, and it has and I just thought, well, I'll just say what I think, and the looks I would get. I mean, because I was just British and honest and all my heart on my sleeve, and I remember they gave me a picture by Sam Rockwell, the artist. It was the one of not Sam Rockwell, Norman Rockwell. Sorry, Sam Rockwell's an actor, but Norman Rockwell, the artist. And it was a picture of Thanksgiving, which is a very famous part of American popular culture, history. And I just wrote this piece about it being how it had nothing whatsoever to do with the modern day world, and blah 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 blah. And it was I might have sort of just sexually propositioned someone's grandmother. It was just really, really not what it was about, what they wanted me to say. I can't remember what the reason was behind it, but I always found it much easier to write and be acerbic than to be positive, which is quite strange. But I remember Ingrid would give me a list of things I had to do in terms of copywriting. So it could be a 300 word piece, a 500, a 200 about different subjects for different pieces in the magazine. And it would just be, she'd be in her little, she had a big office at the front of the magazine, at the front in the corner of the building overlooking the Mercer Hotel. And then she had another place, it was like a bear cave, where she used to go and write her editor's letter every month, which took her days. And we'd all be sending our copy up, trying to get out, for some kind of a weekend. And it would just be Mommy Dearest. It would just be coming back, just the line scrubbed through it. And I just used to be beside myself. And the more I got a line scrubbed through what I'd spent hours. I mean, I'd be in getting quotes from Baudelaire and I had all these quote books in my office, and I'd be going, oh, how can I relate this dress from Escada to Shakespeare, And it was just because Ingrid loved it if you could come up with a really interesting, funny quip about something to do with the art, fashion thing. She loved all of that, but it was really hard to find it and crack it, and it was the DNA thing was really odd. I learned so much when I was there. I mean, I was working at Interview. Ingrid was, she was when I first got there, she was curating the Florence Biennale, which she did brilliantly, and it was she kind of married artists and designers to do these installations at the Biennale, and I kind of got involved in it a little bit, and it was just fucking amazing. It was so mind-blowingly interesting for me, and I couldn't believe I was actually, oh my god, there's Patti Smith's coming to the office, and she's brought in her Velcro ring that's going to go in the little circular hole in the wall of Anne de Millermeister's, installation, which is all about rings and the circle of life, and then Helmut Lang would come in, and he decided to do this empty space that smelt like human, and then the smell of human beings, which was created for this space, then got developed into his first fragrance. I just, all these things I was so lucky to be around for, and to witness, and you know, it's like, I remember I did one project for interview when Miuccia Prada did her first underwear collection, which was so beautiful. It was incredible. It was so sort of such an impossible thing to do, to create something so beautiful and delicate and feminine but strong and not kind of vulgar, and so what Ingrid got me to work on was to get a group of artists to do their own kind of interpretation of or their own piece based on Miuccia's underwear collection. And I was working with like Louise Bourgeois, Vanessa Beecroft, David LaChapelle, Jeff Koons. It was just incredible, and there's no other way I could have got the key to the door of all these different people and to
you
be
must
involved.
be pinching yourself.
And like, you know, Ingrid got me, you know, introduced me to Karl Lagerfeld, and you know, I did so many shoots with Karl all over the world, and just some of my, you know, favourites. When I look back, I probably didn't appreciate them so much at the time, but when I look back now, God, you know, it was brilliant. I mean, it was like Karl. I said to Ingrid would say, "Oh, Karl wants you to go to Paris to shoot a story with him. With, do you know this model Devon? She's kind of Chinese looking." And I said, "Yeah, I actually know her."
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh yeah, he thinks that she looks like a Brancusi sculpture, and wants you to go and do a shoot based on the idea of Brancusi." And this and I didn't really know who Brancusi was, to be honest. And then I kind of looked it all up, and I was just like, my God, Devon does look like a Brancusi sculpture, and we made her look even more like one.
Yeah.
And then we did Karen Elson as Kiki de Montparnasse, the famous, well, she basically was the famous slapper of Paris at the time, but she was the lover of all the artists from the 20s, like Man Ray, and she and we did, and she was a bit, you know, a bit chubby and a bit, you know, ginger, but really incredibly stylish, and a bit dirty knicker stylish, but great. And we made Karen look exactly like her. It was just so much fun, and I had such a great even working with him on those shoots. I had to go into the history of all the subjects and really find out what they were about. We did another shoot in Biarritz, at his house in Biarritz, based on this book about the Americans in Paris, which was at a time when it's called the expatriate years, when American writers and artists went to live in Paris. It was like the 30s. And we did, there was a whole, I can't remember the name of the people, but there was a story about this kind of love triangle with these two boys and a girl. And I think it was Karen again, Karen and two boys, I think it was Karen. And we just, it was Karen, and we just went and did this beautiful story all based on this book called When We Were Three, it was called, about the American expatriate years of these famous American poets, writers who I can't remember who they're called. But I mean, I kind of didn't even know anything about this world.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, these are approaches to fashion where you actually learn something and you actually come out of it more, you know, you come out of it, in my mind, a better person. And I think that I'm so grateful for that, because I find a lot of, to be honest with you, these days I'm not really being pushed so much by people into doing anything like that. It's more like, oh yeah, we're going to do, lace and leather, or you know, some, you know what I mean, something, as long as it's got a bit of a contradiction in it. You know, I didn't ever, you know, I never got to do Diaghilev until I worked with Karl Lagerfeld. You know. So.
No, I know you.
And I think it's important when people push you. And there's only been certain people that have done it. I mean, Corin, for example, who we both work with, Corin Day, she pushed me to the point where I just wanted to give up sometimes. You know, and I love her to pieces, and you know, working with her was like, oh my God, it was like, she, you know, was completely consuming, and you know, she, as first, when you work with her as a stylist, she expected you to be as committed to the project as she was, which was 1,000,000% in her case. So, you know, it meant like, you know, again, like no free time, round her house every night going through books and films and books and films and style.com, and when that came around, and all of that stuff, and just sometimes just feeling, I can't look at any more of this, I kind of feel like, but then years later realising how important it is to be that engrossed in what you're doing to really get a really good result. I can see why she was like that.
Yeah.
And she was very sort of not. She wasn't very quick to show a compliment, Corin, or very quick to show gratitude. She just expected, you know. She expected you to do what you did and more. And I think sometimes that used to get me a bit. I used to get a bit angry with her. And I think I used to resent being around her sometimes, and then I'd sort of snap back into it and think, God, you're so lucky to be involved in this. You're so lucky to be here.
Yeah.
There's a million people that would want this opportunity. Yeah. And when I look back now, I realise what an icon she is, fashion and photography wise. And you know, even now I kind of think when I'm doing a shoot, what would Corin think? Because Corin's completely, her sort of power over me is absolute. Yeah. In a way, like it will never go. She's there.
All the time.
She's there behind me. I feel her.
Yeah.
I
feel the same.
Not in a ghost
exactly
way.
The same.
Not in a ghost way. I don't believe that.
It's like she's ingrained in us a little bit.
I just believe that she was such an influential person in my life. She'll never go. It will never leave me. Never go away. And that's brilliant. It's so good. She left me such an amazing gift. And that is, if I don't. Sometimes I've done a shoot, for example, and I've normally, not because I've not wanted to work on it, it's because I've been like really busy and I've just gone, right, okay, I'll do it. Yeah. And there's not been enough time to really do it properly, and I've just never wanted to look at it again. When the pictures have come out, I've just not looked at it because I just know that I haven't thrown myself into it. I haven't sweated and given it, and I haven't given it my all. Yeah. And Corin made you like literally prostrate yourself on the floor for something, because it was like really important. It's important to, even if you don't notice it or see it in the final result, it's really important to feel that you've gone through, not hell, that you've gone through something to get something great and new. You know, and that's what Corin.
Because you work with her in such a different way to me. Because obviously being a stylist, you work much closer with her, and you know, and I know that there were times when you would call me up and be like, "I'm still at Corin's and it's like 2 a.m. and
Well, I used to feel a bit like Cinderella, because I used to feel like, oh, everyone else doesn't have to be here. You know what I mean? But then other times, what used to really, I used to love Corin because she did introduce me to so much stuff. Yeah,
me too.
But sometimes it would be, especially when Corin was a bit more frail, and I'd go around there and I remember when I used to take round, when we were discussing an idea we were shooting for, I don't know, Vogue or something, like one of the Vogues that we worked for, or ID, whatever it was, and I'd pull all the images of clothes. I can't remember how I did it now, because technology changes all the time, but I'd take round all the pictures of the clothes from the different designers. And then I remember when she discovered style.com. Oh my God, it was like, I'd go around there and she'd be like, I'm ready. And she'd be sat there and she'd be like, she had a blank piece of paper or pad, a pencil.
I've seen it.
And we were at A. And I'm like, it's 9 o'clock at night. And I've got to go through every fucking show. And it's A to Z. And it's London, it's New York, London, Milan, Paris. And we'd be at D, and it'd be like 1 a.m, and I'd be like, Corin, I can't focus anymore. And she'd be going, wouldn't that, if we take that jacket off and cut the sleeves off, and then if we take the trousers, and we'd be on something like some show, like you've never heard of the design, it wasn't even important to the magazine, and she'd be like, she'd like focus on a pair of trousers, for example, because they were low cut. That was always her thing. Yeah. But they weren't the right shape or the right colour, or everything else was wrong. She said, if you pin them in to like this, and then maybe I can change the colour in post, because she got really into retouching, as we know. And it was like, you know, then we'd end up, I'm like, Corin, yeah, I get it, but why are we looking at these fucking trousers? We've got to shoot Calvin Klein, Ralph Lauren, Dolce & Gabbana, Armani. We've got to shoot these people, you know. I can give you the 12 designers the magazine wants us to shoot. Yeah. They don't want us to shoot Creatures from the Wind. They don't. I'm sorry, they're not interested, you know. But that's another thing. She never got the advertising and editorial thing.
Well, I think because that wasn't how she worked in the beginning, was it? And she was always adamant to try and not be like that.
No, but she would always say to me, well, we'd be on a shoot, we did a shoot for Japanese Vogue, for Anna Della Russo, and I was really mad because she'd said to me, and I tried my best, like, we need you to shoot Armani total look, it's important for the issue, come on. So basically, we were in Newcastle with who's that model, Suvi, beautiful girl, doing this kind of happy hooker Coronation Street chic sort of thing, and all the terraced houses, and I put the outfit on and she just wouldn't have it, and she was like, oh, but you can put, there was in the end, I didn't know what to, I just was like, there was a tweed pencil skirt from another brand, I can't remember who it was. It was not a competitor of Armani's, but in the end, it ended up being, she said, I'll crop in as well. I'll send her one of crop in, so then it's the Armani shirt. I was like, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I'll give them, of course, she loved the full length, didn't she? So she never sent them the cropped. She refused to give it to them. So then Anna's completely fuming because in her head, it's my fault.
It's your fault, yeah.
Well, it's the editor's fault.
Mm. Yeah.
But sometimes when you've got because normally what a photographer does, if they don't like the whole look, they'll just go in, and then it's a beautiful beauty shot.
Yeah.
And gorgeous, make the collar look nice, whatever. Corin was, and it's almost like she had this anarchic in her brain that just went right. She could smell the fear. She could smell she could smell the drama. As much as she wanted she wanted to go fuck off. I'm not going to shoot that whole fucking awful Armani outfit.
Yeah, yeah.
We could have made the original Armani outfit. I'll tell you, wasn't bad. We could have made that look good. But she just had it in her head. She wanted to change everything. She wanted to take the buttons off a Calvin Klein jumpsuit and put new ones on just to be like, fuck you, I can make it better.
Yeah.
That was her.
Yeah.
And that was her beauty and her kind of like nightmare side as well.
Yeah.
It was hard work. It was hard work when she, when she went through the changing colours of dresses phase as well. That wasn't easy. Because they weren't available in green. They were only available in beige. It was probably Armani doing beige. Corin wanted it in fuchsia.
Yeah.
But that's what she was, and that's
what made her though.
Why we loved her, but it was never easy.
No.
In fact, God, I can't believe how ungrateful I was. I remember kind of when she stopped, just before she stopped shooting because she became too ill. We were shooting like so many in one season. We did like 3 for China Vogue, I think 2 for Japanese Vogue, we did Italian Vogue, and they just all came like buses, one after the other. And I remember saying to my agent, Emma, this is all doing my head in. I don't think I can do any more because I'm not able to recover, to prep, it's all, and I just think, how ungrateful were you? You should have just been lapping it up and loving the fact you were doing all of that amazing editorial with an amazing photographer. But it was getting hard. It was getting harder and harder, and Corin wasn't well, and she wasn't making the right decisions, and she was still adamant. No, she wanted to always do like the run through, which I understand. I still do that, but we'd be doing run throughs in my house, and there'd be like literally the whole house would be full of rails of clothes. And she'd come in and she'd look at a few things and she'd go, well, there's not enough stuff here. I can't do this. And I'd be like, Corin, I can't move. Corin is asleep. There's nowhere to sleep. She goes, didn't you get any watches?
My favourite thing she ever did with me, actually, when I say favourite, at the time I wanted to kill her, not literally, but we were doing a shoot for Japanese Vogue, and it was based on the Yoko Ono artwork. Remember?
Oh yeah, I did that.
Yeah, you did that. And I remember I was in New York, and Corin and you called me and were like, Neil, you have to come back and do the shoot. And I was like, okay, well, I'll come. I've got to land from the airport and come straight to the shoot, and then I've got to go straight back to New York. And I flew myself in, and I remember arriving at the shoot, and you're all there, and Paul, the set designer, was building the set, and it was looking amazing.
It was a big deal.
Really
to get permission from Yoko Ono.
Yeah, well, we all had to sign agreements, didn't we? Things, and it was incredible. I remember getting there, and actually Corin went to me, I really like the way the girl's hair looks, don't touch it. And I remember being like, I've just flown all the way across the Atlantic. I'm really exhausted because I've not really slept properly. And she's like, don't touch her hair. And I remember coming up to you going, and I'm not doing anything. And you actually looked at me and you went, she doesn't want you to do anything. And I remember being like, I'm going to fucking kill her.
I know, but
you know what was great though?
In a way, if it looked good, it looked good.
It looked good, and I mean, I did do things, but they were so little. But you know what? Actually,
more.
Exactly. And when I look at the pictures now, they were so amazing.
Yeah.
And it would have been mad if I'd have done something, and you know, it wouldn't have made sense. And
well,
she was
that's
right.
what we have to stop ourselves from doing.
Yeah.
Not doing what we don't need to do.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what's mad now is when I look back. Actually, I flew back to have spend 2 days with really close friends making amazing images, and the fact that I didn't do very much was fine. And in a way, I felt a bit of a fraud having my name on it. But you know, Corin was like, "But you're," because I remember saying to her, "Don't put my name on it." It wasn't like I wasn't there. But she said to me, "It doesn't matter. You did play with the hair and move it around."
Of course, having my name on it.
You know, but but at the time, it felt like I was a fraud. But actually,
it's a Vogue shoot. We need to have a hairdresser.
No, exactly.
You know,
exactly.
otherwise they'd be like, "Why didn't they get a hairdresser?"
Yeah. And you know, and I'm glad it was me and not somebody else.
Yeah, I'm in fashion for the whole package.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I feel a bit like that. I don't feel like I'm just doing hair.
Otherwise it's a bit like one of those streets in a Hollywood studio where all the buildings have no back to them.
Yeah.
You know, I want the whole
set
rounded look. I love a woman. I love voluptuous women. I like women with boobs. As much as I like boyish looking women. I think I love all types of women, but I think that underwear is really essential, whatever kind of body you have. In fact, the bigger you are, the better it is in a kind of funny sort of way.
But it seems to me that the bigger a woman is, the more men seem to like
it. A more voluptuous woman is, the better she looks.
Yeah.
In lingerie. But why are we talking about lingerie?
I don't know. It doesn't matter. Thanks for watching part 1 of Karl Plewka's interview. We'll be back soon with part 2. See you soon. Okay.